Want to see some shit that goes really hard if you're stupid?
Get in there on day one, say that anybody in the federal bureaucracy who is not elected, elected representatives obviously are elected by the people, but of the people who are not elected.
By the way, fair warning, this one is really rough, so if you value your brain cells, I'm not joking. Keep in mind, Vivek Ramaswamy is the co-head, one of two leaders of the Department of Government Efficiency, which is, to be clear, a non-government agency. It's not an official branch of the federal government that is tasked, apparently, with cutting waste and excess and so on. Is Vivek evil? Both. He's probably just evil. I think Vivek is smart and evil, probably.
If your social security number ends in an odd number, you're out. If it ends in an even number, you're in. There's a 50% cut right there. Of those who remain, if your social security number starts in an even number, you're in. And if it starts with an odd number, you're out. Boom. That's a 75% reduction, done literally stochastically. Okay.
It's genius. No one's ever thought of this before. How do you fire 2 million government bureaucrats? What if you fired them randomly? That's genius, sir. That's fantastic. Excellent. No one thought of that before. What a great solution.
One of the virtues of that, it's a thought experiment, not a policy prescription, but one of the virtues of that thought experiment is that you don't have...
Thought experiment, by the way. This is what passes for a thought experiment. The interesting, like, questions, you know. I hate his fake accent. He's, like, fake in his entirety. Like, he doesn't have a sincere bone in his body. He's perfect for the modern-day GOP.
A bunch of lawsuits you're dealing with about gender discrimination or racial discrimination or political viewpoint discrimination. Actually, the reality is you've, at mass, you didn't bring the chisel, you brought a chainsaw. I guarantee you.
Okay, so he's saying that this works because it's unbiased, but as people in chat have pointed out, your social security number is in part determined by your location, so it actually would be 100% biased because the first three numbers... Okay, whatever.
Do that on day one and do step two on day two. On day three, not a thing will have changed for the ordinary American other than the size of their government being a lot smaller and more restrained.
Well, like 2 million people will have lost their jobs for one. So those are all people who will have to go on unemployment benefits. And that would cost the government quite a bit. Also, every federal agency would brick instantly and the economy would collapse.
Spending a lot less money to operate it. And most people who've run a company, especially larger companies, know this. It's 25% of the people who do 80 to 90% of the useful work. These government agencies are no different. So now imagine you could do that same thought experiment, but
remember, by the way, that Vivek has never actually run a successful business. The only thing that he did to get himself wealthy was he invested heavily in like a startup that got evaluated highly. He sold his shares of the startup right before it actually went to market, and then it crashed immediately because the product didn't work. He effectively rug pulled. That's where he got his money from. He invested, inflated the value, left. That was it. He's never actually made anything that works. That's the problem with the federal government. They actually are accountable to the result. You can't just go, you know, you can't just declare bankruptcy on a federal agency and then throw your hands up in the air and leave, you know? You can't pump and dump with them. You actually have to deliver results.
Not just doing it at random, but do it still at large scale while having some metric of screening for those who actually had both the greatest competence as well as the greatest commitment and knowledge of the Constitution.
I have a great idea for how to make sure we only keep the people who are most committed. What if we fired people randomly?
That, I think, would immediately raise not only the civic character of the United States. Now we feel, okay, the people we elect to run the government, they've got the power back. They're running the government again, as opposed to the unelected bureaucrats who wield the power today. It would also stimulate the economy. I mean,
why did you say he's smart? Because he's lying here. That's why. He knows what he's saying is incorrect. He knows he's lying. It doesn't matter.
Regulatory state is like a wet blanket on the American economy. Most of it's unconstitutional. All we require is leadership with a spine to get in there and actually do what conservative presidents have maybe gestured towards and talked about, but have not really effectuated ever in modern history.
Incredible stuff. Very high IQ stuff. This shit goes hard if you're very stupid. Anyway, this is as of 1 hour ago. We are already seeing new groundbreaking results thanks to the investigations offered by DOGE. It's time, okay? Now we're going to learn.
tackling this kind of waste, fraud, abuse, bureaucratic bloat, we're going for the stuff that's basic common sense that most Americans actually agree on. And I hope we're going to actually be able to help unite the country by eliminating waste.
We're about to see maybe the greatest example in all of human history of why running a government like a corporation is insane, when corporations often go bankrupt, defunct, fail, especially nowadays, you know, where a prime strategy of business owners or investors can be to crash a company after selling its assets off and gutting it. Why none of this works for a government. One of the big things, governments are supposed to engage in large levels of redundant spending and inefficiencies, because a hyper efficient process is a process where one tiny up breaks the entire thing. That's what it means to be efficient. Efficiency means you've streamlined it without all the excess around it. What happens if there's a mistake or a up? Oh, you found a way to run this department for the the least amount of money possible? Okay, what if someone calls in sick? No redundancies, no reliability, no durability. Everything breaks all the time.
Something that all Americans, regardless of partisan affiliation, can get behind, and that's how Elon and I are thinking about it.
Well, that was Vivek Ramaswamy touting the new Department of Government Efficiency that he and Elon Musk will be running. Now, also known as DOGE, this temporary agency will partner with the White House and Office of Management and Budget to drive structural...
Let me put it this way. How many of you have praised the efficiency of your local DMV when you went there and there were only 2 people working the counter with like 80 people in line? Hey, they managed to run it with like paying fewer wages. Did you enjoy that? Did you like that? Did that make you happy when you went in there and you saw how efficiently they were running? My local DMV is pretty good, actually. Well, that's great for you.
Government change from outside the government. Now, they put out their first messaging on X yesterday, writing this: working overtime to ensure your tax dollars will be spent wisely.
Of course, all the messaging for DOGE will be on Twitter, obviously.
So what have we been spending some of our federal funds on? Let's review. Almost $550,000 went to a Russian lab to run...
$550,000? Are these the margins we're working on? Guys, I've got good news. We've accounted for the taxes of 3 people. 3 people in Anaheim.
Experiments on cats' brains. That was spent by the National Institutes of Health.
Okay.
$3.7 million of...
Wait, what's wrong with that? Couldn't there be, like, useful research? Couldn't research on cats' brains potentially be useful to, like, corporations that make products for cats? Or, like, medicine? I mean, wouldn't we want to know about research on cats' brains? Like, cats are, like, a pretty big part of the human living experience. They're really common pets. I don't know. Seems like something that we could maybe even turn a profit on in the long run.
Funding went to a study on monkeys and gambling, another NIH fascinating project, and the State Department awarding...
Okay. And what were the findings? What were they trying to find? This is what I mean about, like, it's insane because you know perfectly well that, like, first of all, this shit goes hard for actual retards. I think that if you watch a segment like this and agree with it, you shouldn't be able to vote. I don't care if that's fascism. I don't give a shit. If you're watching this and you're thinking, yeah, I don't get what that research is for, cut it. Cut those $500,000 and then you support the military budget ballooning to like $700 billion. Because you know they're never going to touch that, right? They're never going to touch that. They will never. First of all, Elon is never going to investigate any unnecessary spending the government does into his companies, you know, any subsidy, like any subsidies. Second of all, the military budget, none of that's going to get cut. It's going to be like, hey, these egg-headed scientists are researching stuff and we don't get what they're doing.
Tens of thousands of dollars.
Tens of thousands of dollars? Holy shit. That's almost like the amount one guy makes in a year.
For drag shows in Ecuador. And that's just the tip of the wasteful spending iceberg.
What about, like, the billions we've sent to Israel out of curiosity? Or the trillions we've spent on the military? Nothing? Okay.
Here's Senator James Langford rattling off just a few government spending projects at a House hearing last year. Watch.
Last year, the State Department did a grant to Ecuador to host 12 drag shows.
you can tell this is like a really big deal if they've been talking about it for over 1 year. Like, yeah, look at all these examples of wasteful government spending. Here's one thing that happened one time for 1/1000th of our discretionary budget.
In Ecuador with American tax dollars. Now, may have different opinions in this room on drag shows. I'm just asking the simple question. Is the best use of American tax dollars to actually fund drag shows in Ecuador with U.S. tax dollars?
That money should have gone to Israel so we can kill more brown babies. Yeah.
National Science Foundation last year did a study of butterflies in Europe.
Yeah. Guys, I'm not kidding. We're all going to die. Butterflies pollinate. They're literally responsible for the entire... Like, they are in part responsible for the continued existence of the entire ecological infrastructure of the planet. Yeah, they're researching butterflies, which is gay. Do you guys see that tweet where it's like, if the modern day Republican Party went back 10,000 years, they would call you a homosexual for crop rotation? Ha! This guy thinks you have to plant different kinds of beans in the same spot to get more food. What a fucking idiot. That spot's for that type of food, dumbass. And then, like, the human experiment ends. We all die from, like, cold winters and not enough food. We're bringing back Lysenkoism, aren't we? We kind of are. We're literally, like, species regressing.
So we funded with American taxpayer dollars. Last year, there was also a NEA grant that was done to set up a display in Brooklyn for
display. I've heard of them. Heard that sponsorship in the Vati video videos.
The Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Okay.
Which, by the way, is not even an American band. We had an...
Really? This is what we have? You could probably find better examples of government waste than this, like, pretty easily.
Almost, $350,000 grant to study smart toilets.
Wow. Studying how to use less water. It takes a lot of time and money to purify water, clean water that gets run through the municipal system that gets used in your sink, your shower, and your toilet. They don't have a separate line for the water that runs to your toilet. It's the same clean water. So if toilets use less fresh water, then that means that less money has to be spent at the wastewater facility or the wastewater treatment facility.
Was one of the grants that we actually paid for with our federal tax dollars last year. We also had a grant that was done studying colonial Mexican soundscapes.
Well, I would need to know more about that before I could defend it.
We, last year, did a study on helmets and seatbelts in Ghana.
You're right. I can't imagine those being useful to anyone. $250,000 spent trying to determine more efficient ways to protect the human body from deathly collision. No, we could have given $20 bajillion more to Israel. You're right. I'm sorry. This money could have gone to, we're all gonna fucking die, I swear to God. We kind of are. We genuinely are. This is like death cultist. It's the same mentality that they apply towards climate science, but to everything, you know? You don't understand the money was used to protect a black country. Yeah, sadly, the knowledge is Ghanaian knowledge only, you know? If they learn something interesting about how to design a helmet to protect the human skull from impact, we can't use that knowledge.
To be able to study whether...
It is really cool how common sense means, you know? Common sense solutions to our government overspend. Okay, so like this is the shit that hits good with people who are functionally illiterate and probably inbred. You genuinely have to be like exceptionally low IQ. And I mean, I'm not being rhetorical or whatever. I mean, like, your brain is not as good as mine if this hits with you. I mean that. Like, I think you're not like less of a human in a moral sense, but like in an experiential sense. Yeah, I don't really know if I don't know if you're getting what I'm getting. We're built different.
Seatbelts and helmets were effective for saving lives in Ghana. Can I just go ahead and answer that question for free? Seatbelts and helmets are a good idea.
So wouldn't having research into the extent to which it makes a difference be useful? Like, why? Why do you think seatbelts and helmets are a good idea? If we didn't already know that, and there was if there was a research being done today to determine whether or not seatbelts actually save lives, you would call it government waste. We know now that it helps, but if we didn't already, you would say any effort to learn that knowledge or to obtain that knowledge would itself be wasteful spending.
They save lives. Free.
Haley, the American people had no idea about this, and how would they when the administration we are disentangling ourselves from is committed to an opacity, and at the same time, Americans can't afford grocery bills, but hey, let's spend millions on a bunch of...
You're right. I think that every American voter should personally know and approve of every single grant offered by every single administration within the federal government. That's true. It's again, like, this is what I mean. It's evil and they know they're lying. Do you think this woman's outrage is sincere? Yeah, the Biden administration would do that, wouldn't they? All the money wasted on checks notes, seatbelt research, $250,000. But what else can you expect? No, it's none of them believe any of this.
Ridiculous projects outside this country.
It is complete and total malpractice. And the biggest government positions to me that have been appointed are Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk.
What the fuck is this guy wearing? Red patterned socks and running shoes with a suit? Well, I'm glad we're all dressing like we live in a clown country.
In this new department.
I think the Chinese deserve to take over at this point. Oh, by the way, I'm officially planting my feet down here. This is the marker, okay? I think that China now has more of a future than the United States. At least based on the current trajectories. Might the trajectory change? Sure. But based on the evidence presented right now, yeah, 100%. The Chinese Communist Party is more committed to reality than the Republican Party by like a almost incomparable degree. If you talk to a if you showed this to a Chinese government official, I feel like they would laugh and feel better about their position in the world. You know, Maoist Vosh. Well, China's fascist, not Maoist. Well, Mao is a fascist, so would a military junta be better than rule by this? Yes. They're not necessarily mutually exclusive, but a cold dictatorial rule by a military autocracy would probably be better for America's future than whatever this is. And I'm not saying, by the way, like a woke military rule, okay? I'm not saying like a left-leaning junta or a junta that is amenable to progressivism. I'm talking about, at a very basic level, people who exist in reality. And that is the threshold that we are currently falling under right now. It is a well of anti-empiricism from which I don't know how we're going to climb out of it. I genuinely do not know what you could do to get out of this, like, without immense human suffering. I don't know how you argue through this, because you can't argue with any of this. Obviously, partly because all these people are lying and don't actually believe what they're saying, but also because the only people for whom this stuff is convincing are people who are so stupid that I genuinely don't think they can have their minds changed. They would need Joe Rogan to look at this and criticize it, you know? But Joe Rogan would probably agree with this, so.
And it's not just the money. The money is a big part of it. It is gutting the career civil service from this administration. Let me give you an example. Trump becomes president in 2016. Trump goes in. Do you want to know what happens 1 month later? 1 month after he is president of the United States, commander-in-chief, a vote of the American people, details of his calls with the foreign leaders of Mexico and Australia were leaked. Mexico went to the Associated Press. Australia details went to the...
What does that have to do with the administrative state? So other government officials leaked the... What does that have to do with the administrative state?
Washington Post. These were...
Yeah, I thought transparency was good. I thought they've been banging on about that.
Career civil servants leaking the details Trump was having with foreign leaders. They need...
Wait, I'm sorry. Did I miss something here?
Australia details went to the Washington Post. These were the Associated Press. Australia details in Australia were leaked. Mexico went to the Associated Press. Australia details went to the Washington Post.
I'm sorry. Is she saying that the foreign officials talked to American news outlets, or is she saying that members of the administrative state who were present for these conversations leaked that information, which is in the pursuit of government transparency? Who's she blaming for the leak? leaked by officials from the US. Okay, well, that would make more sense with her point. But even then, what does that have to do with like career bureaucrats? We don't know the people who leaked the info. That's the point of them leaking the info. Whatever.
These were career civil servants leaking the details Trump was having with foreign leaders. They need to
Truthless. Her concern here is like loyalty, which is the only thing Trump seems to care about as well.
go. The American people spoke. He is president of the United States. Get rid of the bureaucracy. It's not about undermining Trump. That's undermining you, undermining your vote. Get rid of them.
How the fuck is that undermining? How is providing this information to the public undermining your vote? How do you square this circle? How do you deal with it? How do you, in a world where reality isn't like it, how do you do, like they claim they want transparent. They literally just said they want more transparency from the Biden administration about how money is used. But then they're like, but these duplicitous career civil servants betrayed Trump by telling the public what he did.
On day one, Vivek, I know, is up to the task. I've had conversations with him about this. It's time to put these two in charge. Give them a ton of power. Get rid of career civil servants.
Yes, ma'am. I can't wait. And remember, I was a federal attorney. I was an acting director in a top 10 agency of an appellate office. And I really can't express adequately what it is like to push against the beast of spending. And among those spendings, I want to talk to you about something, Paul, which is the overpayments. This is where the waste comes into play. $3 trillion, Open the Books reported, since 2004. They define it as essentially wrong payments to the wrong person or for the wrong reason. Do you think Americans will give that back? Because I saw firsthand the billions of overpayments by the Social Security Administration where, oh, I'm sorry, guys, we just wasted $3 billion for no reason other than ineptitude, incompetence, or sheer laziness. And my point
do you think she takes issue with people who embezzled PPP loans that ended up getting forgiven because so many people took advantage of them that they decided it wasn't even worthwhile? Nah, don't look at the like $1 trillion we spend on the military, you know? Look at like over the course of 20 years, a few billion got overpaid through Social Security. Not Social Security, not those greedy, conniving old people who have worked their whole lives.
is that it is the structure.
How do you fight this rhetoric, Vosh? I'm really sorry, but like this is the direction things have taken. You don't. People who believe this are gone. They really are. You in an individual sense, like person to person, if you have a friend or a family member who watches stuff like this and they're like, yeah, that's true. Maybe you can push back on some points. Maybe you can. They're not like impossible to reach or anything. But in a social, cultural sense, this is a wave of anti-empiricist hysteria that goes beyond, like you're essentially asking, how do I logic these people out of not believing in logic? You are really running the limit on that. And I think that overall, both history and like contemporary engagement with people who believe this sort of stuff agrees with my position. It's about the media environment. It's about creating a compelling counter narrative. It's not about debunking what they're saying, because what they're saying is so straightforwardly stupid that if the person was susceptible to logic, they wouldn't have believed it in the first place.
Structure that bakes it in. So Elon and Vivek are coming in and they're going to blow up that structure just like this. Well, we gave them money before, so we're going to do it again. No, we do not inherit the incompetence anymore.
I'll give you a good example, salient example. So apparently it's bouncing around online that when Pete Hegseth got SecDef, there was a quote from a government contract, military contractor, saying essentially, who the blank is Pete Hegseth? That is exactly the reaction you want, right? Mm-hmm. Because who's this outsider that's going to come in, that's going to kick this whole thing over, essentially, right?
This has absolutely nothing to do with their talking point of wasteful spending, but it does give the game away that what they're really talking about is Trump loyalty. This is exactly like the whole point of this. The underlying point they're trying to talk about here is how it's good that all of the people Trump is appointing are incompetent sycophants, right? Like that's their real point, which is why they're talking about Hegseth now. It has nothing to do with government spending.
Right? It's not somebody that he's taken to lunch. He's been whining and dining for the last 20 years, that he knows the contract's a done deal. That's exactly what you're talking about, Kaylee, and that is what you need. The other thing is, two things real quick. First of all, why are we funding all these bad ideas in other countries? We have enough bad ideas of our own, for the love of...
Bad ideas? What do you mean bad? Those were research grants. What are you talking about? They were research into an idea. Do you think people shouldn't wear seatbelts? It doesn't even make any sense. Were you paying attention to the earlier bit?
God, why are we, helmets and God, come on. That's one.
See, it was the helmet. What do you mean? Bad ideas? Isn't that a good idea?
The other thing is this real quick. I know and I recognize, and this is the argument against it, that the real money we have to worry about is Medicare, Social Security. I get those are the big numbers. I understand that. But
no, first of all, no mention of the military. Second of all, yeah, pretty hard to cut government spending without going into those. Healthcare, Social Security, and the military. He's prepping people. He's prepping all of the old people who watch this. When they get their benefits cut, you know, they need to be ready. It's going to be really bad, man. In mandatory spending, Social Security, 1.1 trillion, Medicare, 769 billion, Medicaid, 458 billion, Paycheck Protection Program, recorded subsidy cost of forgivable loans made to businesses to cover payroll and other expenses. Subsidies, effectively. Unemployment compensation. Fully about half of our spending and a majority of our mandatory spending is basic, like, if you're old, sick, poor, dying, whatever, you're not on your own. If you want to start really cutting the budget, you're... Keep in mind, by the way, I think that all of these are way too high because I think that there is a fundamental mistake in addressing people's basic needs by just covering the money for those needs. I think that selective decommodification is better because that way you can get those services or products from the companies that provide them at a much lower baseline price rather than paying the regular market price for them. I don't want Social Security. I want old people to have free shit. And then when the government pays for that off of their account or whatever, the government pays less than what a private citizen would. Likewise with Medicare, Medicaid, we know I'm in favor of single payer, so on and so forth. They're going to cut heavily into the non-defense discretionary spending. Definitely not into defense, though. This is only going to get larger and larger every year.
These wasteful products still take us into the billions, right? It still matters. Yep. What you do, and this is what I'd like to see, is as you cut these superfluous programs, put them into something that people visually see. Say, we cut $500 million from this nonsense. We built an old age home.
First of all, you have not found even close to 500 million. You were looking at so-called wasteful spending that was in the ballpark of several million. Like, 500 million is still nothing in the context of federal spending, and you haven't even come close to that.
Veterans. Here it is, in Maryland, in Virginia, wherever. And that money went here, something useful, something domestic.
Yeah. Well, let's do a little more examples of this squander of what your money, guys.
Oh, please.
The government's money, that is your money.
Your money.
Let's show you a few more things.
$30,000? Oh my God. Oh, that's crazy. All of these look totally, wait, $200,000 to make monkeys transgender to study HIV in trans women. They should have put more money into that. That's crazy. $2 million for the construction of a kelp and shellfish nursery in Maine. Isn't that just like straightforwardly an economic investment? Don't you want kelp and shellfish to continue to exist? They're kind of like a component of, like, what? They hate fish? I think they just hate America. Yeah. $100,000 to see if a sunfish is more aggressive than when given gin or tequila. That rules. Dudes rock, huh? The oceans off the East Coast are dead. They need to be rebuilt. I don't think they're getting rebuilt, man. It's a dead country. It really is. It's remarkable because with this, you know, trifecta victory by the Republicans, I think that pretty soon I'm going to have to graduate America to a position held previously by only one country, the United Kingdom, which is that it's a dead country. The United Kingdom is dead because they are so tied to old values and their aristocracy and their nobility, their civility in the face of adversity or presumed civility. They don't want change. They can't deal with change, so they let their country rot and die rather than try anything new. Yeah, the UK is dead, but in a stable way. The United States is about to be dead in a very aggressive kind of corpse explosion way, if you understand my deal.
Things of outrageousness that our tax dollars are being spent on. $100,000 to see if a sun...
Be straight with us. Are we reaching Argentina territory? No, I think Argentina might actually be better positioned because the people of Argentina still have fire in their veins, and I don't know if Americans do. I'm kind of not kidding. I can expand on this more in the future, but civil culture in America is pretty dead. Argentina may be filled with... wacky people with wacky political ideas, but it seems like at the very least they have a strong internal culture with regard to like political action and expressing themselves and fighting back against power and corruption. Have they done this successfully? No, but there's a culture for it. Over here in America, on the other hand, it seems like, dude, we're just sleepwalking into oblivion. And this shit is crazier than anything Milei has said. Milei said he would cut his departments. Okay, first of all, with all due respect to Argentinian people, your departments are not our departments, okay? Our departments are massive, entrenched, institutionally respected, and enormously wealthy. Not yours. I'm sorry. Tearing apart ours versus tearing apart yours, there's a big difference. And also, I don't know if Milei has engaged in this level of anti-empiricism. Like, he has in some respects, but I don't know. Maybe it's just that I don't take Milei as seriously as I take the Republicans, but I kind of stand by that assessment. I don't take him as seriously.
Fish is more aggressive when given gin or tequila.
Oh my gosh.
$1 million to see if selfies make you happy. $1.5 million to study the mating calls of country frogs to see if they are different than city frogs. That, Cheryl, is what hardworking Americans' tax dollars are going to.
Oh, I have more. Why is the University of Mississippi spending
I guess all I really have to say is that if you see this and this hits with you, I don't think you should be able to vote. You have a fundamentally unworkable view of how the world functions and how scientific research functions. So much of the modern world is built on technologies and information that we stumbled into. Weird stuff. You think you're entitled to understand all the research all scientists are doing at all times? Like you, just an average retard, just literally like a worthless sack of shit, that you should be able to immediately understand and intuit the purpose of all research being conducted by all scientists in the country at all times? Like, if this hits with you, you are just not workable.
$12 million for monkeys on meth. And why did the EPA spend $620 grand for armor and night vision equipment? Somebody explain that one to me, but I'll tell you.
Wait, what? That's not even on this list. EPA, armor and night vision? What?
$1.5 million to study the mating calls of country frogs to see if they are different than city frogs. That's
actually really useful. I imagine that environmental factors in the city versus the out wilderness might change behavior in frogs, and that could determine a bunch of interesting stuff about whether or not they're like thriving ecologically. Like, it's very important to understand this stuff, actually. It's massively important.
Cheryl, is what hardworking Americans' tax dollars are going to.
Oh, I have more. Why is the University of Mississippi spending $12 million for monkeys on meth? And why did the EPA...
I don't know. You'd have to show me the study.
Spend $620 grand for armor and night vision equipment. Somebody explain that one to me. But
that's not even a research grant. That's just the EPA getting armor and night vision equipment. Maybe the EPA is doing work down by the southern border and they're a little bit nervous about violence given the current instability. Like, that could be it. EPA has agents that do covert investigations of illegal lumbering operations. They could get shot. There you go. Yeah, that makes total sense. Oh, the EPA does stuff. Okay. Poachers, illegal operations, studying in dangerous areas.
I'll tell you what, the biggest one that killed me was the fact that the IRS between October of 21 and 23, they've got $50 million in unpaid taxes from their own employees.
Whoa.
IRS employees owe $50 million in back taxes.
Okay. What does that have to do with government spending? If it's known that they're owed, then they owe them. It's not hidden. If it's owed, that means it's known. Is there like a suggestion of impropriety here? The fact that you're aware of this information means that the IRA or the IRS has already investigated it. The IRS is the institution that would know this. If you know it, it means they published it. This wasn't like a expose. I
want the IRS so gutted at this point. And Elon Musk.
I bet. I mean, the more money you put into the IRS, the more money they give the government. But of course, you don't care about the government having money. You don't care about the budget. You don't care about the debt. You don't care about the deficit. You don't care about anything. You think that the world is ending soon. You think that Christ will reappear on earth within your lifetime. And anything that happens here, the dominion of man, is meaningless when compared to the glory of heaven.
Musk, remember what he did with Twitter? He slashed out 70% of the employees at Twitter when he.
I can't wait for that
Just
boulder
to
to
point that out.
smash the glass house of the IRS.
But I have to tell you, the other thing, too, is why does Anthony Fauci and Rand Paul pointed this out? Why does he have a $15 million security?
Yeah.
It is true. Elon is really, 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 really good at cutting spending. For a matter of fact, within only 2 years, he was able to cut the amount another person would spend on Twitter by 40 billion all the way down to like 6.7 billion or something.
We covered that here on this couch, Harris. And at the end of the day, the whole point is now President Trump is saying, not anymore, not on my watch. We are going to audit the government and we are going to stop this.
Okay, I have to stop watching this for the sake of me. And I guess maybe for you, but I care about you less than I care about me. All I will say is that if this country has any chance at surviving, it will involve the mass arrest of these people. And I mean that. I think that this is criminal. It should be criminal. You can't, I cannot accept a legal system where you can spend the rest of your life in a jail cell for shoplifting a Twix bar, but you can walk free and wealthy for your entire life for the crime of destroying the country by being paid to lie. I don't believe it. I don't believe that. I cannot fathom that being the case. And I need to get my spite out of the way now, because pretty soon I have a feeling it won't be legal to say stuff like, I think it should be a crime to destroy the country, because to do so would be to implicate the people currently running it. On the bright side, China can buy America up for cheap once it collapses. That's true. I need to stop criticizing China so that the CCP doesn't disappear me when they buy the country.